Hello and welcome back to the Coin Stories podcast. I'm your host, Natalie Brunell, and I'm talking to leading voices in Bitcoin and macroeconomics about their origin stories, Bitcoin headlines and news topics, and this movement to fix the world by fixing the money. This podcast does not provide financial advice. Before I share this week's episode, here are some messages from my sponsors who make this show possible. First of all, are you ready for Bitcoin 2023? I certainly am. This year's Bitcoin conference was absolutely amazing. I got to spend a week in Miami with tens of thousands of Bitcoiners from around the world, and I'm so grateful that I had the chance to anchor Bitcoin Magazine's live desk and MC the main stage. If you missed the event, you can catch all 3 days of incredible Bitcoin content over on Bitcoin Magazine's YouTube channel. And also, it's never too early to start making plans to attend the next conference. Bitcoin 2023 tickets are already available and super early bird rates do not last long. So you can visit b.tc/conference/2023 and secure your pass before prices increase. This show is also powered by OKCoin, my favorite place to DCA without the crazy fees. OKCoin recently launched an amazing initiative called Crypto for All, which is aimed at democratizing knowledge and access to Bitcoin. OKCoin is one of the fastest growing and most secure global cryptocurrency exchanges that serves all your needs for Bitcoin and is committed to investing in educational content, funding crypto developers and entrepreneurs from underrepresented groups, and helping more diverse talent work on crypto ecosystem projects and careers. OKCoin has actually contributed more than $1 million to Bitcoin core devs and counting, has one of the most active Lightning nodes, and recently launched Sats mode. To open an account and start stacking, head to okcoin.com/Natalie and get $50 in Bitcoin when you sign up. I'm so excited to have with me today Fodé Diop. He's the founder of the Bitcoin Developers Academy and a co-founder of the African Bitcoin Conference.
That's
so
right.
Thank you, Fodé, for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
So I want to hear all about you. I've heard you speak at several conferences. You have a fascinating backstory. So let's take it all the way back. You're originally from Senegal.
From Senegal, yes. From West
Tell
Africa
me about your
originally.
young life. And I know you wanted to come over to the United States because you wanted to be Michael Jordan, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
That is right, actually, yeah. So I was born in Senegal, in Dakar, which is the capital city of Senegal. And I grew up in a family of four. My dad was a math teacher in my high school, actually. So I was already into like math and stuff like that, like actually at a very young age. But when I was 15, the summer I turned 15, I really grew really fast. I don't know what happened, actually, right? So I really just became really tall that summer. And then I was always a big fan of Michael Jordan because I grew up in the 90s. So I just used to watch this guy every single day of my life. Because what happened was like, it is really weird. Like it's almost like I don't think people understand the impact of Barack Obama and Michael Jordan, as a matter of fact. Because for me, as a young kid growing up in Africa, like seeing this dude that looks almost like me, kicking ass like that, actually at this level, I felt like everything was possible, as a matter of fact, right? And that actually played a lot in my life growing up and actually in the future itself. So fast forward a little bit, I had a scholarship actually to go play basketball in France, actually, as a matter of fact, in Eastern France, actually. But growing up, I saw the stories of racism with my uncles that went to college in Europe. And
really?
I never wanted to go to Europe,
Wow.
as a matter of fact. So I just begged my dad to take me to the US. I know he didn't have any money, but luckily he just published a math book, maybe a couple of years actually earlier. So we had like some book rights or whatnot, So I pretty much leveraged it, went to the embassy and say, listen, I didn't speak a lick of English at that time, as a matter of fact. I went to the embassy in a very broken English. I was like, hey, I want to go to the United States. I want to be like Michael Jordan, and I want to study computer science.
Wow.
It was that simple, actually. And usually it's like a 99% like denial rate because they know that you don't have the money. So the guy, same thing. He's like, listen, you want to go to Kansas, but to this university, but you don't have enough money to get there. I said, yes, I do, because my dad had a math book rights to this math textbook, and he gets like really royalties every year.
Wow.
And I believe actually I'll be able to sustain it.
And
then
that was
maybe
enough
like
for tuition?
actually not really. As a matter of fact, right? So there's another story because, yes, I became homeless for a while actually in America.
Okay, I remember you
Yes,
saying that.
yeah.
But wait, and just out of curiosity, I mean, out of all the schools, how did you find this school in Kansas?
Yes, so my uncle was doing his last semester of his MBA
Okay.
in Kansas, right? So my dad knew that I didn't want to go to Europe for sure. But at least that was my fallback plan. If anything failed, I would have ended up in Eastern Europe, Eastern France, sorry, by the German border. Because that's actually, as I learned German in high school as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so my uncle was doing his MBA, last semester there. And he said, you know what? I know some people here. Maybe I can put in your application and see maybe if I can get you here. And it actually worked out. One day I was at home and I got this package from the United States.
Wow.
I opened it up and sure enough, my name was in there. It said computer science, blah, blah, blah. Actually, Emporia State University. So I put the money together, went to the embassy. The guy looked at me. I don't know what he saw in me, but it's like, it was on a Tuesday. He said, come back on Thursday, get your visa.
Maybe he was a Michael Jordan fan.
Maybe he
saw
was.
your height.
Actually, exactly. Maybe he was. And yeah, so I came back that Thursday, got my visa. I think the following week, I was on my way to the US.
Okay, I want to hear about your transition and, you know, what it was like, because I know money was really difficult, the situation.
Yes.
But before that, can you talk a little bit about just life in Senegal? Growing up, what was the political situation? I know you had a French currency, right? The Central African franc?
We still do.
Okay, so can you paint the picture a little bit?
Yes, so growing up there, actually, luckily, Senegal is a fairly democratic country. And it's the only country in West Africa that has never been taken over by the military. Right? Every single country in West Africa at some point in time was ruled, the military came, took over the power, and then just ruled, you know. And we know what happens after that. But luckily there, I think it's because maybe the French military base, the biggest one actually is in Senegal, right? So maybe actually that had something to do with the, you know, with people, like deterring people from like trying to take over the government or whatnot. But on the flip side, we have a problem with the currency because we have this colonial money that's made by France. So what happened was basically during the Second World War, when France was under occupation by Germany, when the Germans got there, they took away their money and gave them like a specially denominated Deutschmark for them to use in the colonies, right? So at the end of the World War in 1945, the French thought they can do the same to African countries because then you can actually extract so much value if you're making the money for someone. If you're actually printing the money, physical money, paper money for these people. So what they did was they went to these countries, offered them independence, but not freedom, because actually we are at the Oslo Freedom Forum right now. So they offered them basically independence, but with actually strings attached, which means that you'll be free, but you will deposit almost 100% of your reserves in the French central bank. And then, so what it means is that when Senegal, let's say, sells, we're like a big peanut exporter in the world, right? When we sell peanut to the international market, we get dollars. We can't even use them because we cannot pay our constituents with these dollars. So we sell them to France. France takes it, puts it in their reserves, and makes this fake money in the south of France and send it to us.
That's crazy.
Yes.
Well, and I also read that after Bretton Woods that France even said that they're trying to protect the countries from the dilution because of what happened with the reserve currency, that they're trying to protect you guys by moving in this direction with this.
But it's a fallacy, you know, because the reality is that, yes, when the currency basically depreciates or devalues, African countries can actually maybe export more to the rest of the world, right? But what about imports? What about what we need? Actually, it's almost twice as expensive now, right? And for some reason also, because it is the laws that they have with the French government, the French always have the first right of refusal to any product coming from West Africa, as a matter of fact. So not only do they buy cheaper because actually they dilute the currency itself, but they also get really first rate of approval. If they don't like it, then you can go sell it on the international market.
Do you think that the general public understands how much they've been suppressed as the result of this monetary policy?
I don't think they understand it, because I always go back to The Matrix, which is my favorite movie, right?
Oh, yeah.
And there's a part actually where, I can't really paraphrase it, but Morpheus tells Neo that you were born in bondage, you just don't know it. You can see it, you can taste it, you can really feel it, right? I mean, for us, that's what it was. But even for me, I think I was in the same position, and it wasn't until I saw Bitcoin that I really asked myself actually what money was and actually what was the purpose of it. As a matter of fact, right? Then I went back again and revisit all these little details that was in my life again, and like Steve Jobs said, only looking back can you connect the dots. Right? It was there my entire life. It just that I didn't know, I wasn't aware of actually what it was until I read the Bitcoin white paper. I wasn't even thinking about the States or some of this developed world. I said, this is for Africa actually.
Okay, so you moved to the States. You're ready to attend college. What happens?
Well, actually, even prior to moving, I'm just unlucky. In 1994, our money got devaluated by 50%.
That's right. The tuition that you had from your dad.
All the money that my dad saved basically overnight was cut by 50%. So college was twice as expensive.
Wow.
Right? Which actually really contributed to me dropping out of college because at that time my dad was going to go to retirement maybe a couple of years actually after. Right? So I said, I can't have them be sending me money here, and I know they need the money at home.
Struggling, yeah.
Right.
And by the way, can you tell people how that had to do with the IMF? What happened? Why did your currency get devalued by 50% overnight?
Well, it was the French said that it will make our exports cheaper, and it will bring in more revenue for these countries, you know. But it was actually more manipulation on their side because they wanted to actually get goods for cheap, be it like rubber, be it uranium for atomic bombs or whatever basically. Any resource in Africa, they wanted to get it at a 50% discount,
Wow.
right? So the IMF kind of covered for them, but who was the head of the IMF? I mean, for the longest time, it was a French person. Christian Lagarde, the head of the ECB, the European Central Bank, used to be the head of the IMF,
Wow.
right? So they always perpetuate and move forward the French policies for the rest of the world, but nobody even cares or pays attention to it.
Wow.
So for me to get a platform like this, actually able to share my message, I feel like it's very important.
Of course.
Everywhere I go in the world, I want people to know what's happening actually, because it's got to stop.
Yeah. Okay, so it was devalued. You didn't want to take money from your dad.
Yes.
What did you do?
I basically dropped out and taught myself how to code, like literally.
Dropped out of school.
Dropped out of school, like in the beginning. Then I went back to school in Minnesota. But I realized I really didn't have the money. So what I did was like I got a job where I can study in the meantime. So I drove a van for a hotel. I just basically got to take people to the airport, to the mall, and come back. But in between runs, I would just basically learn how to code.
And is that when you were homeless?
No, actually, well, when I first moved to Minnesota and I was out of money, what happened was this lady that I got an apartment from, maybe she didn't know I was black. At that time, actually, I didn't speak English. So my girlfriend at the time, who was in Kansas, was the one who called and actually reserved all this apartment stuff for me in Minnesota, right? So I showed up, I'm at the airport, I showed up at this lady's house, just with my stuff that I had, my books, my whatever. I knocked on the door, she opened the door, she looked at me. She's like, the place has been rented.
Wow.
And closed the door. On everything that I have, like this is exactly what she told me. I didn't know where to go. I went back to the airport, right? Because I mean, this is where I came from, literally. And from there, I basically slept in the airport for about 2 weeks.
How did that whole thing make you feel?
I feel like it made me resilient in a lot of ways, right? Because even my parents, I told them maybe a decade later that I was homeless for a couple of weeks in America. They never knew, as a matter of fact, right? Wow. I just did what I had to do because I actually learned survival. Mm-hmm. That's why to this day, when I watch the movie Airport by Tom Hanks, it actually makes me tear up.
Wow.
You know, because I was in a particular situation, right? What saved me was that I used to sleep behind a Burger King, actually seats there, because they would actually close it off at nighttime. Yeah. And luckily, it was some African brothers that worked there. And they knew my story. I told them exactly what happened. Yeah. They let me basically sleep in the back of the Burger King, right? I put all my stuff in storage there. And what I would do is that I would take the airport carts, return them, get the quarters, and put them basically in storage. Wow. Like to get my stuff like set up in there. And that's how I was able to like really get myself. It's a long story, but that's how I was able to get myself back into things.
Did you have moments where you felt like you couldn't move forward, you couldn't make it?
I would say maybe like, of course I have like fears because I'm in a foreign country, I don't speak the language, but I'm a very optimistic person in a lot of ways, right? Because I always believe that things will work out, and I always believe that I have the ability to change things for myself.
Where does that optimism and really just resiliency come from? And I ask that because there are a lot of people out here, and maybe even people listening to this, where they come across challenges and far, far less significant than the ones you've come across, and they feel overwhelmed and stressed out and like they can't make it. So like where did that come from? Where did that optimism and resiliency come from?
I feel like it's because the fact that I was alone. And I couldn't like let myself be scared of anything, because then I would just like really fail and die in America. Actually.
Survival mode.
Like survival mode. I'm away. My family, my brother, everybody that I knew is in West Africa still. I'm here by myself. I don't speak the language. I'm still trying to understand the customs, really understand Americans, as a matter of fact. You know, I couldn't even answer the phone because when you're in front of me, I can tell what you're saying, but on the phone I couldn't tell. Right? Because it took me a while to get used to the American accent and all that stuff.
It makes sense that you would gravitate towards math, coding, computer science, because that's a universal language, right?
Yes, but also like I had this thing about computers that I never knew actually what it was. When I was a kid, I used to buy magazines with computer photos on the cover.
Oh, wow, why?
I used to collect them actually. My dad thought I was crazy.
Why?
I just was like fascinated by these machines.
Wow.
And I don't know actually really what actually that whole thing was about. So I never had a computer until I was 19, basically, when I got to Minnesota. So what I was doing actually, when I was driving the van, I had a shoebox. When I get my tips, I just put it in a shoebox. Then I'll go buy a monitor, I'll go buy a keyboard. Then I bought the Packard Bell computer. If I remember, it was like $675, you know?
Yeah.
I bought that thing, and I taught myself like a little bit of C, and I actually got my first job just actually by doing that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, so how did you go from the airport to actually making it, getting an apartment,
Okay.
having a job?
Let me compress it. So I was at the airport for about 2 weeks. What happened was, like, towards the end, I was tired because I wasn't sleeping, but I actually got a job in the Mall of America in Minnesota. What happened was, like, basically there was an express bus that would go from the Minneapolis airport to the Mall of America. So in the morning, I would just go there trying to find work, actually, right? So luckily, I went to this like Chinese place, and I saw the sign, we're hiring, they did really need someone. I went over there, talked to them, and I was like, hey, actually, I don't have the rights to work in the US yet because I had a social card, but it said actually not allowed to work because blah, 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 whatever, right? I'm not a citizen or a green card holder.
Right.
But I met this old Chinese guy, and I explained to him my situation. And he said, hey, listen, all you have to do is that don't show me your social card. Just give me your driver's license and your passport. Because then I tell him that I never saw I never saw your social card. Then you can start tomorrow if you want.
That was nice of him.
Yes. So he took my stuff. The next day I was cooking fried rice in the morning at like 9 o'clock in the morning, learning how to use these little walks with my knees and tossing fried rice and just
you're
like really
communicating in broken English?
broken English like the entire time.
That's really incredible.
So one of those days, actually, so when I'm like really tired because I haven't been sleeping, I'm like in the back of this Burger King and really just having a hard time. I was on my way back to the airport from the Mall of America, and I was just sitting there just thinking about my life. And this guy who was next to me, older guy, gentleman, asked me asked me what time it was. I told him the time. He's like, oh, you have an accent. Where are you from? I'm like, oh, I'm Senegal, and blah, blah, blah. He said, what are you doing here? I said, oh, man, I came here trying to go to school, but my apartment didn't work out. He's like, what? That's crazy. Listen, my roommate just got a dog, but my apartment complex doesn't allow dogs. Do you want to come check it out? I just met this guy. I'm like, right now? She's like, yeah, let's go. You jump on a bus, and it's in Eagan, Minnesota. I'm like, I don't know this dude, but I ain't got nothing to lose. I jump on the bus with him, get to the spot. Sure enough, his roommate has like this miniature German Shepherd, really cute dog. I'm like, miniature German Shepherd, what is that? I've never seen one, And then he's like, yeah, this is a room. If you want it, the guy will be here for like 6 more days maybe, if you want to crash on the couch. I said, are you serious? He's like, yeah. I went to sleep on that couch. I just woke up with them looking at me. I was snoring so loud. I was so I was so exhausted from this whole whatever, right? But luckily in the morning, I went to pick up my stuff at the airport. Guess what? I get to the things, all my stuff is gone. And there's a note there that said that I wasn't supposed to have it there for that long and blah, blah, blah.
What did you have there?
My books, actually, all the stuff, my clothes, everything is gone. But there was a note there say, come in the airport, whatever. So I found the place, and I go there, and this guy is like, hey man, you can have your stuff here for more than a week or more than whatever time. There's a time limit, I guess you can have the things in there. And he says that, but he said, are you a student? I said, yeah, because it's all my books and stuff. Like I had like math books and all these things like back then, like calculus and stuff. He's like, hey, don't do it again. Just take your stuff and go. I said, yeah. He's like, yeah. I'm like, thank you so much. I took my stuff, went to Eagan, and that's how everything started. Wow. And that same old guy that asking me about what time it was, he was a developer. He was the first engineer that I ever met, actually.
Oh, wow.
He used to work from home, and he worked actually on a database called Fax Pro. And the first time I saw a developer working from home,
oh my gosh.
the discipline that he had. He woke up every day at the same time, made coffee exactly at the same time, and walked right into his office and worked till like 5 p.m. and then came back and talked to me.
Wow. So did he help you get your first job within computer programming? Or?
No, actually, I just like really learned from him and his actually habits,
Okay.
right? So what happened? How I got my first job actually was amazing. So I learned some some C, programming language, and then I was looking at the paper one time, and I saw like this entry-level developer job, and it had the same zip code as where I lived, 55425 or something. I
And
think I remember.
yourself. You taught yourself
Yes,
coding.
yes, 55425. I mean, I took some classes like
Yeah.
online, but it wasn't. Like I said, my English wasn't there, so I always had a hard time like really actually understanding the topic and everything else. But I really persevered and like really just learned and slowly but surely got in there.
Amazing.
So thank you. So I saw this job on the same zip code as where I lived, and I walked in there with some shorts actually, with a barely printed resume. I said, "You guys hiring?" The lady that was on the phone is like, "Yeah, you want to check it out, whatever." I'm like, "Sure." I gave her my resume. Sure enough, they called me, right? So they called me, and I go in there, and I had to like pass this like coding whatever. I don't know how I passed that thing. To this day, I cannot tell you what was in it, how I was able to figure it out. But I got a call. They say, hey, we want to offer you this job. It's paying $30K. I said, $30,000? He said, yes. I called my dad. I said, I'm dropping out of everything. I got a job. He said, got a job doing what? I said, programming. He said, it's impossible. I said, yeah, I did.
Amazing.
And sure enough, I got to the job. And 2 weeks later, the person who trained me quit. So I'm actually the more senior person now there.
What?
And I'm writing software for insurance companies, basically for Progressive.
Oh my gosh.
Doing home and auto insurance.
And you're how old at this point?
I'm like 19, 20.
This is incredible. Your story's incredible.
Yeah,
it's a really incredible story.
Thank you.
Okay, so I know that the journey probably has more narratives that you may want to share, but how did you ultimately find Bitcoin? Because that's where everything kind of took off and transformed for you, right?
I found Bitcoin basically about 11 years later in Las Vegas, Nevada.
11 years later.
Yes.
So you were working your way through kind of the computer science industry, coding, developing.
Yes, but I left it a little bit. I moved to LA.
Okay.
And taught myself cameras as well.
That's
why
you
I know
said
the FX3s.
no more to basketball. You were like,
Yes. I just play on my friends and all my stuff, you know.
Okay, you moved to LA to do what?
Yeah, cinema.
Why?
Yeah, because I just love digital imagery.
You wanted to be in movies or film movies?
No, I wanted to be a director.
Okay.
Yes. So actually, I started as a photographer. So I just started taking photos here and there, and then I was getting compliments. I'm like, oh, maybe I'm decent.
That's
Maybe I'm like whatever. And then I got better. I took more workshops and stuff from this guy from Canada. I can't remember his name. He came to LA in Culver City, and I took this course this workshop for a week, and that really actually changed me, as a matter of fact. And around the time, the Canons were coming with the first actually DSLR cameras called the Canon 5D Mark II.
Yes.
I actually had a Mark I, which was my first full frame camera, and I understood what the full frame camera is. Wow. So when the Mark II came, I saw the demo video on the internet. I said, man, this looks like Hollywood movie damn near, actually, right? From this camera, whatever. So I went and bought the camera itself, and ended up doing weddings in SoCal.
What?
I was getting paid very well, actually, doing these very expensive weddings in somewhere in Southern California.
No way.
Yes.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, so I just learned through the process and learning using how to use his cameras and stuff like that. And I basically use the same skills to start shooting music videos and other things. And that really just kind of put me on my path to basically.
I love how you kind of set your sights on something and you set a goal and you accomplish it. You just learn the skills and you go for it. I love that.
I just
said
thank you. I just didn't have a choice, And also I'm fascinated with digital imagery, because to me photography was amazing, because to this day actually it helped me, because photography actually helps you see. Yeah. Right? A lot of people don't actually understand why photos matter. What actually makes a photo a good photo? If you can't actually tell that, you don't really know actually what the photo is saying. Actually, what is the story or what is the message about this photo itself, right? And video is the same thing. 24 frames per second, 30 frames per second, right? Which means that I'm doing the same thing, but just actually extrapolated a little bit longer.
Yeah. Super interesting. This episode is also brought to you by one of my favorite companies in the space, Fold. Fold is the easiest and most fun way to earn Bitcoin on everything you do. So if you're interested in Bitcoin, but you really don't know where to start, Fold is the perfect app. There's a daily wheel that you can spin every day for free, and you can earn Bitcoin, free Satoshis. Seriously, there's no catch. And one of my other favorite things is their card, the Fold debit card. You can actually earn Bitcoin back on every single purchase. So make sure to download the Fold app today. There's a referral link in the description. Super interesting.
That's all there's to it.
Okay, so from computer science to film to Bitcoin, how did you get there?
Yes, so just to backtrack a little bit, I came in the US in '94, and this is when the internet was coming up. Yep. Right? So after my programming job, I ended up getting a job at US West Communication in Minnesota for the telco, the big telco company there, right? So there I saw the internet come up. This is back in the Yahoo days and all of those days, running servers and all those things. And I finally actually learned tech the right way at this particular company. They trained me for a couple of years, before I moved to LA, as a matter of fact, right? So me seeing the internet, I saw the democratization of access to information. Sure. That was the first one, actually. That was the first really big kind of thing that happened back then, right? So in '08, I was in LA, and I was part of the big debacle with the subprime mortgages. I almost lost my home, actually. Oh, man. Something that I really worked really hard for, actually.
Yeah, my family lost.
Yeah, so Wells Fargo, I don't like them very much, but that's fine. That's another topic.
They're not a sponsor.
Right? So I ended up really in '08, starting to look at more CNBC and watching these financial channels and trying to figure out what it is, and happened to figure out how did I ended up just like
Yeah,
being
what
so
happened?
miseducated about finances that I almost lost so much money that I like, saved and whatever, right? So in 2011, I ended up moving to Las Vegas actually to because in 07, 08, when the iPhone came out, I realized that the world was about to change, right? I went to Santa Monica to touch the first iPhone, right? And what was crazy about the first iPhone is that it has a Safari browser inside the phone itself, right? So the same browser that is on your computer now is the same one on the phone. And Steve Jobs actually reiterated this like many times. I said, this is crazy actually, because now really the phone becomes a computer. So same in Africa, same way actually we really skipped the landlines for telephones. We're going to basically skip the computers and go straight to the phones, right? So seeing this, I'm like, okay. Now, one of my friends was a very good engineer, so I pitched him on the idea when the iPhone came out to basically use it to build an app to help people find events, right? So I'm like, I think film after a decade, I was done because, long story again, because I figured that actually that in America, movies are pretty much like an hour and a half long commercial, right? That's for everybody outside of America. So when you live outside of America, you see the movie, you want to go to America.
Wow. Yeah.
So I actually finally understood that. I'm like, man, they got me. But that's fine, you know?
My family experienced that. My mom wanted to come to the U.S. because of the movies
Yeah,
she
with
saw
the movies.
when she was young. Yeah.
That's what they are. I want to have a 2-hour commercial basically.
It makes life look really good in
That's
some
right.
movies.
That is
Really,
right.
really good.
That is right. Yeah. So I moved to Las Vegas. Turns out, just by total accident, in the building that I lived in, on the first floor, there was the only Bitcoin meetup in 2011. It was called the Las Vegas Bitcoin and Linux Meetup.
Wow.
Run by this guy by the name of Julian Tosh, a very intense guy. So I used to go to this meetup and kind of see this thing. I said, I wasn't sure exactly. I'm like, well, this sounds crazy, like this digital money, blah, blah, blah. Then I read the white paper.
And it just made sense.
It just made sense.
It's your whole background.
Yes,
I mean,
and actually to like top it all off, my roommate from Jersey at the time had a payments company. They had like a point of sale system that they were
Wow.
basically putting into the cloud. So living with this guy for 3 years, I learned about payments.
wow.
Because he was so passionate about payments. That's all we talked about all day. What happens when you actually swipe your credit card? I didn't know.
Do you believe in like fate and things, the universe sending you signs or putting you in the right place?
Looking back now, again, like I said about connecting dots, looking back now, sometimes I feel like maybe I was put on this planet just for this particular thing,
Wow.
as a matter of fact, right? Just exactly for this, because all these things that happened along the way, like from the movie The Matrix,
Yeah.
right? Because actually The Matrix was based on a book called Out of Control by Kevin Kelly. In that particular book, in actually chapter 12, he talks about cryptocurrencies coming up in the future.
Wow.
Right? So I had to go back and look at it again and say, this is actually impossible. This whole thing was there the entire time,
Yeah.
right? So me and my roommate, again, he's into payments. I discovered Bitcoin. But what I saw, I said, wait a minute. Basically, the point of sale will integrate with Bitcoin because then now merchants, people can. I said, this is the end of it, right? But my startup, the event one didn't end up working out. So my co-founder, my CTO, wanted to move to San Francisco and do like machine learning, blah blah blah. Back then, I was like, what is machine learning? Anyway, so he moved to San Francisco. But then when he got there, he said, hey, you should come here. I know you don't like you're not actually writing as much code these days, but you should. I said, really? He's like, yeah. So as usual, I got everything. I did a quick stint in Hawaii for 2 years. Then I went to San Francisco. And then when I was in San Francisco, I did a coding bootcamp in Oakland, California. So there I learned like JavaScript, full stack JavaScript. So while I was in the coding bootcamp, at that time I also discovered Ethereum, as a matter of fact, right? So I proposed to the school to run an Ethereum meetup because I already know JavaScript. I know how to use Web3. I know how to use like smart contracts, blah, 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 whatever. So I will learn stuff on Sundays and teach them on a Thursday, right? And the school gave me pizza, gave me the location because to them, it brings in more students in the school, which actually helps their business and or whatnot, right? So one day I was doing a presentation on Web3. This is like in 2017. And this guy in the end came and shook my hand and said, hey, I'm so-and-so. I work for an online casino a few blocks away from here. We're launching a token. Would you want to come and see and talk to us about what you're doing?
A casino was launching a
online
token.
online casino, yeah.
Okay.
So one day at school at lunchtime, I walk over there, and sure enough, before I left, they offered me the job, a very lucrative job.
To do what exactly?
To write Solidity Ethereum smart contracts.
Wow. To build the token?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
So are you into the whole Web3 space?
I was for a long time, for 2 years.
Oh, and then
from like 2017
so you went on the
2019.
journey. You went on the altcoin crypto
Yes,
journey, and
I
then
did.
you went back to Bitcoin?
Yes, because
Why?
when they released the token that they had for the casino, I realized that it was total utter garbage. First of all, right? And I saw people I didn't like, first of all. I saw people like get rich, but in the wrong way. And there wasn't the reason why I actually got into Bitcoin in the first place.
Right.
Right? It got me like thinking about this whole system again, actually, why this thing actually is the way it is. And to top it all off, Ethereum forked. And I'm like, well, this is actually a broken promise. The blockchain is supposed to be immutable. You guys messed up, and you choose now to basically revert the chain and have a whole separate, basically, fork.
Right.
Right? I'm like, maybe I'm gonna take a break, think about this.
And at the same time, were you mining Bitcoin or accumulating it the whole time? Did you have really strong conviction in Bitcoin?
In Hawaii, yes, I was mining with my roommate.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, so we had like these machines called made by 21 Co.
Okay.
So we had those, and then we'll just like mine, but like small scale.
Right. So you were still like stacking Bitcoin, but then starting to get involved in these other things, and ultimately you came back to just Bitcoin.
Exactly.
Okay.
I actually, and I got into Ethereum because my coding bootcamp, actually I learned JavaScript. And actually, so Ethereum was easy to get into because it's all in JavaScript pretty much.
Got it.
Right?
Okay.
So, and like learning like Solidity, all that stuff, that wasn't too bad itself, right? But it was all new at the time. Nobody actually knew how this thing worked, right?
Got it.
But then because I had to teach it, I had to learn it, right? So like I said, every Sunday I learn and teach on basically the following Thursday.
So what happened next? How did you ultimately create the Bitcoin Developers Academy?
Yeah, so I took a break and I moved back to the city in San Francisco from Oakland, right? And there I started going to the BitDevs meetup with Alex Leishman.
Cool.
And the first time I went there, I saw Peter Willey, some of the co-contributors, Greg Maxwell, Lalu from Rosebeef from Lightning Labs, Elizabeth Starks, everybody. I said, this is what I'm supposed to be.
Oh.
So luckily, I only lived a few blocks away actually from there on Market in 7th in San Francisco. So every month, I made sure that I went there basically for about a year. And what happened was in the beginning, it was like Chinese. I couldn't understand none of what they were talking about. It was so complicated. It was like a totally foreign language, as a matter of fact. But something told me to keep going and keep learning, keep going and keep learning.
Bitcoin development.
Bitcoin development. And then luckily, there was a transportation hackathon in San Francisco, big one. So I went over there, and I wasn't sure if I was going to participate, but I was sitting in the front, and there was a company called the Smart Car API. And they say the way that it works actually is that if you want to have your car washed while you're at work, you basically, they get this app, the people show up, you open the car remotely, they get in there, wash the car, and you can close it. I'm like, what do you mean remotely? They say, yeah, you can do it through the API. I said, open the car remotely? They said, yes. I said, this is interesting. What about if I can maybe have a Lightning invoice, I can pay it, and it will unlock the Tesla.
Wow.
Yeah. So I had 48 hours, I didn't sleep much. And I said, maybe I should just maybe give it a shot. I should use BTC Pay Server, use the API, get the hook, and figure out a way to basically do this thing. I swear to you, on Sunday morning, I didn't sleep for 48 hours. I just scanned the QR code, the car unlocked.
What?
Yes. Yeah, that was the most tremendous story I
That's
ever told.
amazing.
Yes, like, so that changed everything because that basically gave me the confidence that now I understand Bitcoin, I understand Lightning, actually how it works.
Wow.
Right? And through that same process, while I was there, I ended up getting a blockchain job somewhere on the Baltic Sea. I was on a sailboat for like a couple of weeks, whatever. And then while I was there, I got a message from Elizabeth Stark. And she was like, hey, because I applied or something online, and said, do you want to come to Berlin for the Lightning conference? I said, sure. I said, where are you? I said, I'm in Estonia, somewhere in Eastern Europe. He's like, yeah. I was like, what are you doing there? I said, I'm working on a blockchain project, blah, 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 whatever. So I ended up just like basically flying from Tallinn to Berlin, attend the Lightning conference in 2019. And there I realized, I'm like, okay, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life.
That's amazing.
Yes.
How do you not have a book? With just your story.
Maybe one of these days.
Movie.
Yes.
It's very inspiring.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, well, let's talk about just a couple of big picture Bitcoin things, because one of the things that obviously you're super passionate about is Bitcoin as a tool for human rights.
That's right.
So talk to me about how important it is to spread Bitcoin in Africa, because you're working to do that.
Yes. So there are a couple of things. If we notice in Europe right now, there's a big push to block immigrants coming from all over the place. It doesn't matter if it's Ukraine, doesn't matter if it's like places of crisis, whatever, but mostly Africa, because in Africa, kids are dying trying to cross the Mediterranean to come to Europe, right? The way that I saw it, actually, again, with Bitcoin specifically, is that if you acquire the skills, you can get paid from anywhere in the world. right? So actually what it does is like it automatically actually stops the brain drain, right? Now, if I'm a kid somewhere in Africa, I have a laptop, access to the internet, and actually curiosity and willingness to learn. I can learn this really actually complicated topic, and someone somewhere in the world will handsomely pay me for it, and I don't have to go anywhere. So once I understood that, I said, hey, this is actually how we can basically like really solve the problem of unemployment in Africa, because it's actually rampant. Numbers are like up there, I think like 53% or whatever, right? And yet we have the youngest population in the world, right? So this technology, not only actually can it help like nations get around this colonial currency, again from France, right? But it can allow the youth to earn from anywhere in the world. Because the problem, again, somebody's developed the world, right? For you to get a job, you have to know someone at that particular company. Your uncle, your aunt, or somewhere works there, right? So for the first time ever, you don't have to worry about none of that stuff. You can figure out a way to basically earn BTC from anywhere in the world. It doesn't actually matter if it's African or not. If you are anywhere in the world, right? So what I saw, I said, you know what? I think what I'm going to do is like focus more on education and like really get these people the skills that they need, actually modern day skills, which means that with COVID again, you don't have to go to the office. You can work from anywhere in the world. But only if you like really are willing to sit down and acquire these really actually, I say difficult skills a little bit, unfortunately.
But tell me something, because the Central African Republic was the second nation to adopt Bitcoin as legal tender. And one of the challenges that I'm reading about is that a lot of people there don't have access to internet. Very low percentages. So is it like that in many nations, or? I
think it's just there, like, because they're like the second poorest country in the world. Unfortunately, right? So I would say that it's not perfect, right? But again, I think we should think about it from a different approach. In El Salvador, they went to like create a wallet for the general population first, and then trying to figure out a way to get adoption. I think that was a mistake, personally. I think what they should have done basically is focus on SMBs and SMEs, small and medium businesses, and small and medium enterprises. Right? Because what it does is that you want to empower the people who are going to basically create the jobs.
Interesting.
Right? So I'm not saying like do not use Bitcoin as a payment right now, but what I believe actually is needed right now is a way for anybody, a company or individual, to be able to acquire Bitcoin and actually get a loan against that particular Bitcoin itself. Because to me, Bitcoin actually is the most pristine collateral in the world. Right? Even as a young man or a young woman anywhere in the world again, right? Would you rather try to acquire a house or acquire some BTC? Right? With all the process it would take for you to actually acquire this particular home. Because if you go to the bank trying to borrow some money, most likely, especially in Africa, they will never give it to you. Because you are not credit worthy. And sometimes you don't even have an address. Right? And you might not even have your birth certificate actually, or all these actual details for you to be like basically credit worthy. But having BTC makes you automatically credit worthy.
In terms of adoption, where does Africa stand? What percentage of the population has adopted Bitcoin? Is it growing faster there than in other parts of the world because it's needed more in real time? Because when I go to conferences that are about human rights, or I hear from organizations that are working in that area, it seems like the use case is, the spotlight is on it. The use case makes more sense in some of those countries than even in the US.
Yes, well actually, in some of those like countries with like oppressive regimes, right? If you again, we go back to West Africa again with 15 countries that are under French, basically, whatever, colonialism, imperialism, whatever, right? Those countries sometimes have some presidents that have been there for almost, I think like there were three presidents who've been president for 120 years combined.
Wow.
Right? With France, if you speak against the CFA, they will somehow, some way get you in trouble as a president even get you, basically get a coup to get you out, or somehow, some way eliminate you, or sometimes even kill you, as a matter of fact. Because it happened in Togo back in the days with Silvio Olympio, right? He was trying to get his own money and actually get away from the CFA. They killed him within 48 hours.
Wow.
The president of a nation.
Wow.
In Togo, right? So it's dangerous, right? So the idea is like, how do we, for us to basically get away from these dictators, as a matter of fact, right? The way we can do so is that we got to circumvent the existing monetary system itself, because France basically supports them and let them basically stay in power, because they perpetuate these franc CFA money thing that's happening right now itself, right? So for us, again, if you don't want to be killed, tortured, or whatever in your country, trying to run somewhere itself, right? We got to figure out a way to basically push these people out.
Right.
And the only way to do so is not to give them enough power or give them power with this money that's already existing.
Right.
So for me, the way that I see it is that we got to use basically BTC, not only even like as a token, but also as a monetary network
Right.
to network these countries and put them together to fight against this French imperialism.
Wow.
And to me, that's how I see basically feeding in a basically activism context itself.
What can people do to help? I mean, I feel like there's so many stories that need to be told from Africa. Is that one of the reasons why you're doing the conference?
Yes, actually, and I also want to bring the knowledge and the folks to come and see Africa for the first time. People who have never been there, right?
Yeah.
Because now they don't have an excuse. They know me, so you can't say I don't know anybody in Africa.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I'm inviting everybody to come through. So the idea is that I just want to bring awareness. I want to bring people there for the first time. Let them see Africa for their own selves, and not like rely on TV, YouTube, or whatever else, basic articles written by other people, right? Come see for yourself. All of us had ideas about El Salvador until we got there.
Yeah.
I was worried. I thought about the gangs, blah, 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 whatever, right?
Yeah.
I get there and I'm like, what, this is amazing.
Yeah.
I ended up staying there for 6 months.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
But I had the same situation. People were writing to me being like, do you have security? Are you going to be okay?
Yeah, exactly, right? But this time around, in the Central African Republic, I speak French. I don't have to worry about because in El Salvador I had trouble with Spanish and all that stuff, but that didn't stop me from building a community, making meetups and doing things actually there. But in Central African Republic, because I speak French actually now, I feel like I can contribute more. And it's a much smaller country.
Right.
Almost actually half the size of El Salvador.
Got it.
Right? But actually in population.
So what about adoption in Senegal?
I'm leading it, basically. It's just me and my brother right now.
Yeah. Can it be
I
the
like doing
third
the most.
country to legalize?
It can be the third country, but actually the central bank is based in Dakar, right? The French, African central bank, but really the French central bank is based in Dakar, right? So we might get more pushback there, but I feel like in CAR, they just didn't have a choice.
Right.
It's second to last poorest country in the world, right? So they figured that maybe, I don't want to speculate, but I'm sure they saw it maybe as a lifeline for them to get out actually in the situation they are.
Right.
Again, right?
Right.
There's not too much like electricity or internet or whatnot.
Yeah.
But the idea is like, I'm not saying, again, I don't want to say that Bitcoin is a one and all tool, the savior, all this stuff, right? What I'm saying is that we need a tool to basically help these countries come up in the century, right?
Right.
We don't have to luxury to sit down and try to build something for the future.
Right.
Bitcoin is here,
Yeah.
it works.
Well, your family knows what it's like to have currency collapse 50% overnight. What do
Exactly.
you think about what's happening right now in our country? The inflation rate, they tell us, everything that's happening right now in the markets, selling off,
Yes.
Bitcoin's price is dipping. We have this massive debt bubble, historic debt. What do you think?
I think inflation is unfortunate. There was a pandemic and people stay home and didn't quite work. The government felt like maybe it was important to print all this money and send it to people as a bailouts or whatever, right? But ultimately, all that money ended up somehow in Bitcoin and in crypto, right? Because people are at home watching these YouTube videos, thinking that they are investors or whatever you call them, whatever, right? And pushing all the money in the system. Me, I knew that was not sustainable. I knew if the basically economy contracts, that money would come out of BTC as well, right? It was going to happen, right? So things were inflated, things were hot, but to me, it will normalize over time. But it will take a little bit of time, because right now markets are suffering. Obviously, the government is no longer really, pumping in cash in the system itself. So things need to normalize and hopefully get the froth out, and then we can really continue on.
And have you been supporting your family? What has their financial situation been ever since the currency was devalued? Has it progressively gotten worse there for people?
Yeah, because if you look at it, right, the franc CFA has lost almost 90% of its value since actually then actually.
Exactly, right.
So because the problem actually what happened was initially the CFA was pegged against the French franc, right?
Right.
At the time.
Yeah.
But then the French joined the EU and went to the Eurozone.
Right.
We didn't even have the freedom to vote of whether or not we wanted to be part of this thing.
Right.
Look at, we're in Norway right now. Do they use a euro? No. They use a crown. They have their own money because they are free to choose what they want to do with their own sovereignty and with their own nation. We don't even have the luxury. And it actually hurts me to say this because we are at the Freedom Conference.
Right. Well, I know that this is kind of a big philosophical question, but what does Bitcoin mean to you?
To me, Bitcoin is freedom. That's really what it allows us to do. Because the problem is like, without freedom, there's no dignity, right? People all over the world, we're all the same. It doesn't really matter if we're El Salvador, Africa, United States. We all want the same things. We want like a roof over our head, education, health, entertainment, and a couple other things maybe. We can like, so we can like really have a family itself, right? But if you can't even feed yourself, if you don't even have the money, the decency to basically feed yourself and your family, because there's a third party a few thousand miles away that's controlling your destiny and robbing you from your future, right? So for me, actually, what Bitcoin actually means is like really not independence, because independence is not freedom. These are like actually two different actually concepts, right? So for us to be free, we need to be more in control actually of our destiny, and by doing so, we need to be more in control of basically our money. Because the worst thing that actually the French did before they left was that, the brain is like an operating system. The language you speak programs your brain.
Yeah,
right?
Of course.
So the French, what they did was like, what did they do when they left? They left behind their language and their money.
Yeah.
Right? So all of a sudden now you have an elite that speak French, and everybody else doesn't matter. Right? So how do we actually reverse this thing? How do we make people like feel confident about like really the future and what they want to do? And also actually sometimes it's the same problem for like actually black people all over the world. And I don't want to make this like a racial thing, but I'm like African American. I grew up half of my life in Africa, half of my life actually in America itself. But luckily for us, even black people in America, we are the richest black people in the world. Right? So for me, that's very, very important, because now I know that people look up to us somewhere else, because there's oppression of black people all over the world.
Right.
Right? And I don't want to, again, make this like the racism kind of thing, but the idea is like, how do you empower people who financially have always been in this like financial apartheid?
Right. And do it in a way that brings economic opportunity and is based on technology and math and truth.
Yes, and open source technology.
Right.
It's open source.
And it's not any political insider picking winners, picking losers. It's freedom.
That's right.
That's awesome. What do you think is the most undervalued quality or aspect to Bitcoin?
I think it's the monetary network that people don't understand, because everybody's fixated on this token and the value is going up, coming down, blah, 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 whatever. But they don't understand, actually, they don't see the bigger picture. Bitcoin network is almost like Swift network itself, right? And for the first time, we have the same network where every single company can basically be part of, and every single country in the world can benefit from this open monetary network. That's a public network and a public utility.
Yeah.
Right? Which means that I can basically send money to my mom from where I'm at in Miami.
Yeah.
Send her through a Lightning application, invoice, pay this invoice, whatever, and then she can get it locally in whatever currency that she has. And actually like get this insight one time, listen to Jack Mollers from Strike. And I'm like, that is actually genius. I never even thought about that.
Yeah.
Right? So when I actually went back to the drawing board, I said, man, this is amazing. Because now, I mean, like, the idea is like, how do we leverage this like monetary network to build the tools to empower us financially for the future?
Right. So are you building with Taro as well, being able to put stablecoins on top of Bitcoin? Because I know in the developing nations in Africa, stablecoins are really important, right? Can you share a little bit about that? Yes.
I mean, stablecoins are actually like really like, because, okay, imagine my mom. I send her BTC. She calls me in the morning. What happened? I'm like, what happened? Said the price went down. I'm like, well, I don't have any control over that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So for me, people who are not like less educated have a hard time actually computing the volatility aspect of BTC. And actually it is understandable. Because if you're poor, I mean 20% actually.
Of course.
20% down makes a big difference.
Yeah.
If you got to feed yourself and your family and everything else, right?
And all the prices get distorted.
You
You don't even know what anything's worth.
Exactly, right? But everybody understands that basically $1 equal $1,
Yeah.
right? Everybody understands everybody in the world wants access to USD because that's the most secure, like really currency actually out there. So now I'm seeing actually more and more uptick demand for stable coins as well. And I know we're in a Bitcoin like a platform, but you'll be surprised to actually find out that the most actually popular stable coin in Africa is Tether on Tron.
Tether, okay.
On Tron specifically, actually, because people care about fees. Right? So they will basically choose whichever network like serves them the particular need for the particular time. And now, because people are understanding more actually, well, I don't have to worry about like the volatility of this particular asset. When I wake up tomorrow, it's still going to be $1.
So you send her in Bitcoin, and so how does that all work on like Lightning and that whole conversion with stablecoins?
Well, Right now, actually, it's not really necessarily. When you send the BTC, it's not really converting to stablecoin. It's converting it more to like mobile money locally there.
Got it.
So that's the idea, right? Because mobile money there makes more sense. Because then what happens is now you don't have to worry about the volatility of this particular asset.
Right.
I can send it over this basically network. She can get it in mobile money itself, and my mom can go to anywhere there in a kiosk for mobile money and redeem it for basically cash.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I know that you're one of the folks, and I agree with this. We shouldn't be focusing on the short-term price at all. But lots of people they're nervous. Maybe it's their first bear market. You've obviously been through several of them.
Yes.
So, just any final messages and takeaways for people maybe experiencing this first significant dip?
Yes. I think the problem with people is that I'm sorry, saying the problem with people. That doesn't sound right. I think the issue is that people are too impatient, right? I believe that actually we will get there, but it will take longer than people expect. Ideally, right? Again, luckily, I came in the US in the 90s when the internet was coming up. I remember not being able to download a photo or image like a JPEG because the connection actually was so slow on dial-up modems, on AOL, and all these things back in the days, right? And fast forward 20 years or whatever later, what do we have now? You can stream 4K video on Netflix on your phone or your computer. I couldn't have seen it myself, I couldn't have seen that, right? So we will get there again with Bitcoin, right? Right now, everything is like the UI, the UX, the price, blah blah blah. I'm like, yes, because Bitcoin is still a child. I mean, a young child, like 12 years old, 13 years old. But ultimately, it will take some time for us to get there, for the technology to mature, like things like Taro to come into reality, because we realize that actually we need the stable value on top of Lightning, on top of Bitcoin. It's very important, right? I'm just hoping that Taro is more open standard that everybody can like really contribute to, like somehow, some way, or maybe implement. But the idea is like, there's no need to be impatient. If you're building, you understand actually things take like a little bit longer, right? So we just gotta like sit back, relax, and not take things too seriously, and then hopefully we'll see it happen. I like to wrap up again, a simple example. Look at Egypt and the pyramids. These are like the world wonder. Do you think the people actually who designed it knew that they were going to see the end of it?
No.
No. It took hundreds of years to finish those things.
Right.
But yet they actually spend this time and effort, their livelihood to design these things. So for me, that's how I see it. I said maybe I might not even see myself the outcome of it.
Right.
But what I know is that I got to work on something important I know can actually make a change for the future generation, myself actually, and also like the future generation. So I might see it, I might not see it, right? Yeah. I was happy to see Bitcoin legal tender in El Salvador, to like witness it myself, and now see another African country on the CFA's actually zone take Bitcoin as legal tender, right? But then the road is long, I understand, but I'm psychologically ready for that actually. And why I want to do this actually, why I do the interviews and everything else is because I want to leave a legacy behind, right? Even if I'm not here, I want to still information that I shared to be relevant and useful for the future.
Well, Fodé, thank you so much for joining me. This has been such
a
pleasure.
Welcome. Thank you.
And good luck with everything
me.
you're doing. I'll have links to all of your
Absolutely.
projects.
I'm really honored to be here. And I'm sorry it took me so long to actually make this happen. But we're in Oslo and this is amazing, and I'm just happy to be here and to be able to contribute and share like some of the stuff that I learned over time.
Thank you.